Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dads on the Rocks podcast. This is the July edition of the Dads on the Rocks podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Today's guest is somebody that I've gone to middle and high school with. We had mutual friends, never hung out or even got close, but we found friendship in fatherhood and music and alcohol and a couple of different things. But we've really grown to be friends and have a really great relationship, even though most of it is usually texting, but even still, we remain close and talk almost every day. So today I'd like to introduce my guest for today's show, Andre Fernandez. Andre, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I love the concept of the podcast, so I'm excited to be a guest.
Andre, as you may not know, he has one child right now. We'll see in the future if that changes, but he has one son, and his name is Andre.
His name is Lucas. He's 19 months old.
I can't even remember what it's like to have a 19-month-old child.
It's like having the Energizer Bunny, but that doesn't like to be told no and has temper tantrums.
Oh, good.
Best way I can describe it.
I'm so looking forward to that.
But they're little sponges at this age, so that part is like really exciting to watch him figure out. Like, he's starting to learn numbers and he's learning more words. So that part is really exciting. But he's also still at the point where, you know, he poops his pants and has temper tantrums.
I mean, I'm still there, kind of. So, I mean, I'm not going to give him too much grief.
It's like being a really drunk 38-year-old, basically.
All right. We can hang out. Me and Lucas are going to be friends. As always, with every podcast, we start with a toast. Today, Andre, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a scotch today, which is slightly unusual for me because I'm more of a whiskey or bourbon guy. But I have a scotch I really enjoy. It is Great King Street by Compass Box. This one is a single Marion cask limited French oak barrel select pick from Lucan's Liquors in Tampa. And this one in particular is a Tampa Bay Whiskey Society pick. So it's been a really good bottle. I've been happy with it. I'm showing Freddie right now. It's good stuff.
Very nice.
But this one's it's like a really good introductory scotch, and also it's 98 proof, so there's a really good chance that I'm going to be moderately shit-faced by the time we finish this recording.
Fantastic. That is exactly what we want here on the Dads on the Rocks podcast. I have been drinking since 1 o'clock, so.
Attaboy. What are you drinking?
Tonight, I am drinking a Redemption High Rye bourbon. I've had a couple of different Redemptions from the liquor store that's right by me. They came highly recommended. Bullet Bourbon is my drink of choice, and they kind of recommended this one and a couple other different Redemption ones, and this one's really good too. So, Andre, cheers to dads.
Cheers to dads. So I have to ask, do you drink yours neat or do you use a cube?
I cannot do it neat. I have got to have it chilled. And really? It's not that I want the ice to water it down. I just have to have it cold.
A cube or a splash of water sometimes does open up different flavors, so that does help. So I always think it's really interesting. So I like to ask that because I think that you get different flavors depending on how you do it. One of my very good friends is a huge whiskey snob, so the advice he gave me was always take your first sip neat, and then eventually you'll get used to drinking it neat, even if you start to add a cube or things like that.
Okay.
And now it's I'm tainted because I almost can't go back. Like, I feel like I'm cheating when I add water or an ice cube to it, which is funny because I genuinely enjoy the taste, and a lot of them it really does change the palate of it. So you can drink it with Diet Coke, and if you enjoy it, you know.
Hey, whatever your palate enjoys,
exactly.
Have at it. Everybody's tongue is different.
Yep.
Have you ever had any good experience, or your buddy that's kind of a connoisseur? What about putting the bottle in the freezer? Because I don't mind drinking it neat, but it has got to be cold.
You know, I don't know. The only whiskey that I have in my freezer is a bottle of Fireball, and that's for, I don't know how or why it got there, but it's still full.
Because Satan put it in there, and you should throw it away now. Because there's going to be two things that happen if you drink Fireball. Number one, you're going to get an allergic reaction and break out in handcuffs. Or number two, you are going to get a goddamn divorce.
So I have a great fireball story, and I'll make it quick.
Please.
It's awesome. So it's my good buddy Ben, the same one I'm talking about with who is now quite a whiskey snob. The first time we hung out when I moved here, it was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and it came over 4th of July, I believe. And he shows up with his own cooler. He's brought himself beer and he's brought Fireball, and he brought himself a handle of Fireball. And at the time was not a huge drinker. I enjoyed beer, but for the most part I drink craft beer, and that's about it. So anytime anybody said something, there was a small group of us there. Whenever we said something like we realized we had another like common interest, he'd go, "All right, want a shot of Fireball?" And probably the first 2 or 3, we're like, "Yeah, sure, we'll take a shot." So me and one other person that were there, we each had a shot of Fireball. And then something else happened later. He goes, "All right." He goes, "Let's take a shot of Fireball." So we had another one. And then as the night goes on, he keeps going, "Oh yeah, all right, have another shot of Fireball." Me and the other guy are like, "No thanks." And he's going, "Okay." And then he'd pour himself a shot and he would take it. So he would continue to take this shot. So every single time he did that with excitement, as the night continued, the look on his face of pure anguish when he would pour himself his shot of Fireball and then go, "All right." He just sounded more and more pain, but he was committed, so so now he's basically in my backyard, just shit drunk, in very bad shape. And he's a big dude, he's 6'4", I don't know, 200 and something pounds. Like he's a good sized dude. His wife finally drives him home. She's like, "All right, I'm going to get him to bed," cause he's in really, really, really bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, every time I'd go over there now and say, "Hey man, I brought a small bottle of Fireball," and he'd look at me, it's like, "All right." He just looks so sad about it. So it's become like a customary thing now that when we go to visit, I bring a small bottle of Fireball. That might actually be how that ended up in my freezer. But we usually make a stop. I'll go to Publix and buy like a little, the homeless man Fireball.
Yeah.
So
just enough to remember the pain.
That's exactly what it's for, right? But I feel like if you can't rib with your friends back and forth, like, what fun is it?
Do you have one of those, a drink that you have such horrible memories of that you just cannot?
I do. I went to,
because I feel like everybody does, but I want to hear yours.
Sure. I have to hear yours after. But
okay.
I remember mine was I went to Shannon's uncle got married, and we were probably 18. So her uncle was getting married, and they got married actually in her backyard. So she had this really nice backyard in Cooper City and over the small lake. So they got married in this backyard, and they had a bartender come who was not obviously IDing people. And me being 18 was like, "Well, I'm going to take advantage of this." Sure. And I had like, I don't know, 4 strawberry margaritas. Cause at the time I thought that was a brilliant idea. And every single time he poured, I'm like, "Hey man, can you pour a little bit of that Quavo right there into the straw?" So I'd get like the neck pour of just a little bit of hit. And I remember by the time I left, my brother picked me up and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I'm obviously very, very drunk. And I look at him, I'm like, man, I feel like 1,000 pesos. And I'm like, which I'm pretty sure is like 4 cents American dollars. And I felt terrible. And I, of course, like got home, laid down on tile because it was the only thing that felt good. And I prayed and fell asleep. And I woke up the next day and felt so bad. And, at the time I bartended. So every single time I had to pick up a bottle of Quavo, I would just shudder. I don't know how else to describe the feeling I would feel just holding the thing. I was like, "Oh, you bring bad memories." It's the most disheartening feeling. It just like it chills you to your core and you don't know why. What about you? What's yours? There's that many?
Yeah, I'm kind of seasoned in this. Unfortunately, there's no real story here, but just an overall rule for everybody. 151 should never be touched by human hands, tongue, feet, whatever. 151 is the absolute worst thing that you could possibly put in your body. If you don't know, 151 is 75-ish% alcohol. Don't do it, kids.
You can clean car batteries with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I say that Bacardi 151. They don't even make it anymore, so I'm told.
Really?
I have like half a bottle in my liquor cabinet, just in case I ever need to spit fire at somebody.
Just in case a pressure washer is not working for your driveway, you can just pour a little of that on and scrub. Clean anything.
Good heavens! What a bad idea. Anyway, so if you haven't already, like and follow our Facebook page. We're available on most podcasting apps. Just search the name Dads on the Rocks and you'll find us. Today, like I said, is the July Dads on the Rocks podcast. We just passed Father's Day. Andre, how was your Father's Day?
It was good. It was very low key, which is enjoyable and also relaxing because with a 19-month-old, you will take any quiet moment you can get. How about you, Freddie?
My wife, my lovely wife, Stephanie, she unfortunately had to work on Father's Day. She always works on Sundays. She just happened to work on Father's Day. So, which means I had the kids all day long to myself. I didn't really get a day of rest or, I didn't have to worry about dinner. I actually had to cook dinner, take care of the kids all day, just like any other Sunday. It wasn't.
It's uneventful.
Yeah, it was uneventful, and it was. I got to be a dad on Father's Day, which kind of apropos, I guess. So I didn't get a day of rest. I got a day of dad. So July has a couple of things coming up. 4th of July is the next one up. Do you have anything planned for 4th of July?
I'm hoping to go and visit my parents. So my dad has recently retired as of last week. So I'm really excited about that.
Nice.
And they bought a property in the east coast of Florida. And Lucas being born right before COVID, there hasn't been a really good opportunity for us to see a lot of family, and my family lives for the most part of the state. So I'm really looking forward to that time just because it's an exciting thing for me to watch my son grow up and figure stuff out. But it's really exciting for me to see his excitement when he meets and sees my dad. He's met him before, but it's just really awesome to see that they've kind of already got a bond going. So I'm looking forward to that. And then of course, doping up my dogs so they don't freak out from fireworks.
Yeah.
How about you?
We are not doing a heck of a lot. Again, 4th of July falls on a Sunday and Stephanie cannot participate. But luckily, like I said in an earlier podcast, we have a great neighborhood and a lot of great people that live around us. So we all decided that we're going to do 4th of July on the 3rd of July. So we're going to do fireworks, barbecue, and all hang out together. And actually, something that we were playing with is getting to know the neighbors that we just say hello to, that have kids or just got married or are about to have kids or whatever. We are trying to invite them to come and hang out with us. It's kind of like a bread breaking and, hey, come and meet and greet. Like our kids are going to be going to the same school, taking the same bus to school. Why don't we hang out kind of deal? So we're inviting all of them to do fireworks and everything with us at that day on the 3rd of July. It's nice that, one of us can't be there. So they're all going to come together and be there so that she can.
I think it's so awesome, man. That sense of community means so much, especially with kids in the neighborhood and just, I think even building a sense of normality, because I think a lot of that's lost as we're getting older, or possibly it's just the next generation, or maybe I'm just being cynical, but I think that, I don't see kids outside playing the same way that I used to when I was younger and like what we used to and, where we grew up. So I think that being able to help build that foundation and get to know your neighbors again, that's how it should be. That's normal. So I think that's awesome, man.
And I'm kind of grateful that we're in a neighborhood that we're all of the same mind of exactly what you just said. We miss that from what we grew up with, because when we were 6 to 10 years old, we had that community feeling. We all knew each other, we hung out and everything, and things have kind of gotten a little fucky. But now we all realize that we kind of miss that. But I said, why don't we get to know our neighbors? Our kids are gonna go to school together, they're going to ride the bus together. Why don't we be friends with them? Like, well, they've got a kid and they're a little bit too young to play with our kids. Who cares? Let's all be a community.
Yeah, man. So, be the change you want to see.
Exactly.
When I was a kid, you remember Jessica Mead?
She was, sorry, Steph, she was my absolute biggest crush for several years.
Really? I didn't know that.
Big time.
I lived in the neighborhood with Jessica Mead, Caitlin Pitta, and Danielle Harris. So they all lived in my neighborhood. So this little circular block. And granted, they were all a year younger than me, and they were all girls, so it was a different dynamic for playing as a kid. But what I always thought was awesome was because the three of them were friends, their parents were friends. And what they would do is on every Halloween, they'd walk the girls around the park, and they were just a little bit younger than me, but they'd walk them around the neighborhood, and they would bring like a red wagon. So Jessica's sister Maddie would usually give up about halfway through the walk, as a much younger kid would do, because I think she was probably like good 5-6 years younger than him or something like that. And the parents would literally drag a red wagon around the block, and it had like a cooler with snacks and then like beer for the adults, and they would all walk around together. And like as an adult now, I think about that and I'm like, that is like, I want to be the drunk parent circling my kid around the block with the other neighbors, like having a good time and letting the kids have a good time and like everybody enjoying themselves. That to me is like, it's truly now in retrospect, like you don't think about that when you're younger, but now to me as an adult, I'm like, that's the freaking American dream. Like that's the dream that I want for my kid, is I want him to like hang out with the neighbors and have a good time and have the sense of community and know that he's safe where he is. And if he needs a neighbor, he's comfortable with the neighbors because we spent time together. Like that's what you want, right? You really want to build that trust in that community. And again, as a kid, I was like, oh, that's funny. And as an adult, I'm like, fuck, they're genius. Like, I'm like, I'm ready to meet other parents in the neighborhood. Like I was honestly considering going on next door, because where my block is an older block. So with the exception of the next door neighbor, we are the youngest people on the block by, I don't know, 20 years.
40, 50 years.
Honestly, like there's the house across the street, they sold because the couple that lived there went to a senior home. And then the people next to them it was a daughter who was living there because her parents had like left her the home. I mean, again, the neighborhood's just a much, much older neighborhood, so we're in the process of transitioning to being a younger group. So younger parents are starting to move in. My neighborhood's very big. So my block itself is still very old, but the neighborhood itself has popped up with like more younger families, and I'll see them because I'll take my son on walks, and and I think they've got the same desire too, because they'll see me and they're like, nobody can see me doing this, but I'm waving. They get the like excited wave.
Howdy,
and
neighbor.
they see with their kid, and they're not my neighbor, but they live in the same neighborhood. And one of them I've met, and like of course I met him COVID, and he's got this like crazy beard. He looks like a Castaway style, and he's like super like spastic almost. He's an awesome guy. He's super, super nice. And like halfway through, he's like, hey man, sorry. He's like, I feel like I've forgot how to interact with human beings. He's like, but I brought a bottle of bourbon and I met him and we, shot the shit for a few minutes. And like, that's what people need to do. Like you need to build that sense of community, meet your neighbors, spend time with these people, because like they live in the same neighborhood as you, like they want and hope that they've got the same goals, that like they want to keep the neighborhood clean. And like, you want your kids to grow up and have a good time and like, just enjoy life. It's awesome. I love it.
I know you and I spoke off air at one point about living in a kind of community, kind of like what me and my brother were talking about in the last show. I feel like that might be coming around for you because you have such an older population in your community. It's going to be cyclical, and it's just kind of how the world works. And once an older crowd moves out, the younger crowd moves in.
That's it.
And I feel like you might actually be primed for a really great community in the next 4 or 5 years when a lot of younger kids, not kids, but a younger crowd moves in and they're having kids. And so you might be in really, really good shape.
But it's like we already started to see the trend. And it's exciting for me because I can't wait for my kid to be able to like go and play with other little kids and just like have a good time and like, do what we did and make up stupid games and just run around and like enjoy the day. It's an exciting thing. In case you're wondering, I'm now on Scotch number 2. I'm feeling pretty good.
We haven't even gotten. This is still the intro, folks.
I'm sorry.
By the way, I don't get to talk to Andre that much outside of text messages, so fuck you guys. This is more for me.
I'm having a good time. I am. But hey, I do have to segue to one thing. It's your birthday at the end of the month.
It is my birthday at the end of the month. I'm going to be 35 at the end of the month.
Can I give you good advice about 35?
I would love to hear any kind of advice at this point.
It's the same shit as 34.
Okay. All right. Very good. Good.
Yeah, that's the only positive. At this point, the years stop mattering so much. As long as your hips don't hurt when you wake up, you're pretty much fine.
After 30, I was like, next big milestone is 40. So I got some time. I think everything is going to be pretty much the same in between now and then. So
29 was my rough year.
29?
Yeah, like I woke up and I remember something hurting. I can't remember if it was like my knee or something. And I was like, what is this? This isn't normal.
Something hurting that didn't hurt yesterday.
Yeah, like that was the year for me that I was like, I remember more joints hurting than they're supposed to. And for me, it was like it was a shell shock of like, oh God, like I'm not that old yet. Stuff shouldn't hurt. And now it's just like, I got a good ibuprofen regimen. So like I'm fine.
When it's okay and maybe a little bit more often than prescribed, but it'll be okay.
I just use it as coffee creamer now. And just throw in two and mix it in. Are you not supposed to do that?
They're like Alka-Seltzer. Just heat it some water, throw 2 ibuprofen in there. Call me in the morning. How am I going to call you? I'm fucking dying here.
You do the finger stir, but you just no. Honestly, my only difference between 35 and 34 was I have more coffee now. That's about it.
Okay. So anyway, we have to press on. First things we do here, Andre, is talk about something regarding parenting, something in relation to parenting. You have an idea for both the parenting topic and the non-parenting topic. For the parenting topic, take it away.
Yeah, so I think there's something inherent about being a parent, or even the idea of being a parent, that immediately introduces something they refer to as a FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think it's a really important topic because I think that when I was looking into becoming a parent, or my wife and I were discussing the idea of becoming parents, there weren't a lot of people who were really like open about that. And where I think that's where our relationship, Freddie, you and I, had strengthened quite a bit, is because you were very honest with me about parenting, right? You seem like you were just having such a good time being a parent, and you're not much younger than me. You're a year younger than me, but
yeah, well,
but Allie's 4 now, 3,
3.5, yeah.
Okay, so 3.5. So you started quite a bit earlier than I did, and for me, that was a really terrifying thought, right? You're starting a family, and I'm going, oh God, there's a lot depending on me, and am I gonna be good at this? Am I going to be able to take care of this child? Am I going to be able to take care of my family? Am I making the right decision? Is this going to be a nightmare? Right. So I think there's always those fears because it's something it's just the unknown, right? And you don't know until you dive into it. I think you and I had a lot of conversations about it even before, Shannon was pregnant, of just saying, hey, this is something we're really talking about. And, you seem like you really love being a dad. Is it really as awesome as you make it seem? And, and you were really honest with me of like, hey, you know what? Most of the time it is. And some days are really hard, but the days that aren't hard make up for the days that are hard. And that was a lot to me, right? Understanding that and having somebody's honest feedback to me was really helpful. And really that fear and uncertainty and doubt, I think, is something that people don't talk often enough about with being a parent. And even a dad, the expectations, I think, have changed quite a bit over the years of what a dad does. It's not 1950 where like you just like show up with your briefcase and you go to work and you pat your kids on the head and you like sit down to your dinner that's already made, and you like, no, it's, there's a lot of involvement. There's involvement with parents, and I think generations have changed. Like I was talking to a friend about this recently, and I jokingly said that if we hug our kids, we're already doing a better job than the previous generation, right? Because
yeah,
I think we probably lucked out because we were probably already at the tail end of the dads being more involved. But I feel like the generation just before us, like the dads were not, that was not the expectation. The expectation is like they went to work, they earned the money, they were the breadwinners, and that was it. So, I think with those changes, it creates a lot of fear, right? Hey, I'm a parent. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right? You just have to figure it out.
I absolutely understand the fear aspect when it comes to, hey, I'm a parent, or I'm going to be a parent. What the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to let everybody, Andre, you and everybody else, on a secret. As far as my experience goes, nobody knows what the fuck they are doing. It's the most terrifyingly brilliant thing that anybody experiences.
Oh yeah.
When the child comes, you're like, I have a baby, and thank Christ, my wife works with children, and she taught me how to feed and hold a baby, because prior to that I had virtually no experience. So
Yep.
she taught me, okay, here's how you hold the baby, here's how often you feed the baby. But other than that, like, you don't know what to do.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
my baby is crying. Okay, I don't know why my baby is crying. Is it hungry? No, I just fed it. Did it poop? Okay, yes, they pooped. Okay, that's why they're upset. Okay, okay, let's fix this. Okay, and you learn with the child as they grow. You learn with them, but the fear doesn't go away. It's you. Something else is coming up. Like, my daughter now is 3.5, and she is in a whole different world from when she was like my son's age or Lucas's age.
Mm-hmm.
There's new things that you have to learn how to deal with and fix. Not necessarily fix, but teach. Fix
Yeah.
and teach. I would say both. You never know what the hell makes you qualified to teach this little kid to do the right thing.
Oh
That
yeah.
it's absolutely 100% normal to feel that.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head, because I think even from the hospital, right? So there's, as the father, as the husband, whether you're the husband, the boyfriend, whatever, right? As the father counterpart in the relationship, there is so much that is out of your control. So I think part of that's already a hard thing to struggle. And like, granted, me as a person, I'm not somebody that has to be in control all the time, but I like to understand I'd like to understand if I know, or just know that I'm not going to be in control, whether
Right.
I am or not. I need some sort of guidelines sometimes, right? That's what's helpful to me as a person. And I think that's part of what's scary, even from that process, right? So you start from the birth process. Okay, what do I do? Right? You're in the room. What do I do? Just be there for your wife. Okay, what does that mean? We don't know. She doesn't know. She can't explain to me at that moment because there's a lot going on for her, right? So sometimes it's physically just being present is a big deal. And Freddie, I think you hit the nail on the head. The most terrifying moment that I remember as a parent was the moment that I walked in the front door of my house the day Lucas came from the hospital. My in-laws were there. They only stayed for the night to watch the dogs. And I said, okay, hey, we got to go, have a good night. And they left. And it was me, Shannon, the dogs, and the baby in the house. And I literally said, what the fuck do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's a scary moment, because at the hospital, yeah, it's new and you're scary and emotions are like just 1,000% amplified. Like I wouldn't say that I'm like a super soft guy beforehand. Like maybe, yeah, like I'm not super overly sensitive. And like the moment my kid is born, like I am a puddle. Like he'll be like, dad, dad. And I'm like, like waterworks, like full, you know, just full scale, right? It changes you. And for me, again, it's that same level of emotion I think you feel for the positive things. It amplifies a little bit of terror too, because we got the house. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Just like you said, right? It's like troubleshooting. My wife and I used to make a joke that we'd say it's like a game show. Like, what's wrong with the baby? And it's like, okay, let's check the diaper. Is the diaper clean? Diaper's clean. Okay, let's check the next one. And it's like we'd go through the checklist of like, okay, he's fed, his diaper's changed. Are we holding him? When's the last time he slept? Right? Just going through the list of stuff. And there's always those moments in the back of your head of like, there's a life that is now my responsibility. My job is now to make sure that this life form exists, gets to where they need to be, that they're functioning on their own. And there's always that like general feeling of like, am I gonna fuck this up? And I think that's just really scary. But I also think that you described it so perfectly that, I spoke to my dad about so many things, as I got older as an adult, being able to have more introspective conversations with my dad and saying like, I remember saying to him one day, when did you feel like you're an adult? And my dad kind of chuckled at me and he's like, some days I don't feel like I'm an adult. He's like, some days I still feel the same way I did when I was 16, he's like, but I know that if I did the same stuff, I'd probably get hurt. So it's I think that mentality is still there sometimes, of like, you're always mentally sometimes relating to like the 16-year-old you, right? Or the childhood you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that in there creates part of that doubt too, because you feel a little bit like a kid taking care of a kid. But I really do think that those moments that really count are just being there sometimes. And that's what I learned a lot from you, is sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you said like, that's okay. Are you there? And I said, yeah. And he was like, okay. Does mom need anything? And I said, no, I checked to see her. And, or like Lucas be crying throughout the night. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And you're like, just be there. Just be there. Hold him. It's frustrating. That's okay. Just be there.
Honestly, I'm very humbled at the fact that you took so much from me, and I am nowhere near the pinnacle of fatherhood in my
You can
eyes. I
brag a
don't
little.
like
You're pretty good.
There's nothing I won't do for my kids
That's it.
except skydive. It's funny when you're, and a lot of our listeners already have kids, and you guys probably know, once you have children, there is no more you.
No, not at all.
It is,
You're a package deal.
what can you do for them?
Yep.
What can you do to help them move forward? What can you do to help them survive? And in the podcast, I kind of counteract that with, what do you do when you're not being a parent? Because it is very important for you to keep your own sense of self. But when it comes to when it's time to be a parent, you focus 100% on them. It is about your children. And you don't know that at first. That's not fucking fair to you to have to learn that, to have to figure that out. Sometimes it takes some kind of guidance or somebody else telling you, hey, sometimes the days suck.
Yeah.
The days aren't so great. Sometimes it's fucking awesome. And that's largely why I wanted to do this kind of podcast, so that we can actually talk about these kinds of things. It's not always fun. It's very difficult sometimes, but it is always guided towards the kids.
One, I think the important part too is it's always worth it. If there's a way that I could spend my energy, if it is improving their life or doing something that brings them enjoyment, it's totally worth it. And Shannon and I talked about that, because we had laughed about that not too long ago. We did something, we had like a rough day with Lucas. He was just in a bad mood, and he didn't want to eat, and then he didn't want to nap. It was just a rough day. And then by the time he gets to sleep, Shannon turns to me and she goes, do you remember how we used to complain about not having enough time to do stuff before we had a kid? And then she's like, I can't even think about what we did with our time before we had him. Like, it was just, it all, there's, and I know everybody's different, but it really did. Like, a lot of the time felt very trivial, and it's like, I'm not saying that, like, my wife and I didn't go and enjoy our lives, like we've been together a very long time. We've taken like great trips, went to New York. We had a great week one time, just like enjoying New York. Like, that's an awesome experience. And we definitely couldn't have done that with a 19-month-old, not in the same way.
A newborn or a 3-year-old, even.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine taking my kid to Boston.
No, it'd be a nightmare. But the reality is, if you're asking me, like, if somebody had told me, hey, you have to give up that New York trip, but in exchange for giving up that New York trip, you get to sit back with your kid, listen to music, or you get to, like, just like you said, if it's either you take your trip to New York, or you get to hear your kid say dad for the first time, I'll take dad 1,000 times over.
Any day of the week.
It's just, it's different.
Was Lucas a C-section or
no? Natural birth.
Natural birth. Okay. Did you get the feeling when you first saw him?
So I would say I had a feeling for him the first time I felt him kick. That was what really got me. That made it real for me. That I was like, oh, this is a real thing. And when he was born, I was waterworks. Just partly I was very focused on Shannon, because Shannon's birth was super, super smooth, which was great, but also she was in a lot of discomfort. So I was focused more on
taking care of your wife instead of the child.
I was going to say the foul language coming from my wife, but yes.
Okay.
Yes. But yes, the same. I was very concerned about her at that moment, and she had him, and it was, like, she had her moment with him, and then I had my moment, and it was just awesome. It's funny. There's a picture somewhere Shannon's got of me, and I'm like, it's funny to, like, look back at it now, because I'm just holding him and I'm just looking at him, and I am like, dude, my eyes are so red. I'm like, it's so many tears down my face, and I'm just holding him like, I can't believe this is a thing. Like, this is, you're literally, we made a human being. It's such a cool concept. And, for me, I think going back to that, like, just being there moments, the being engaged as much as you can, it's hard, right? It's hard sometimes, especially I imagine probably most dads who are listening to this, like you guys work, we've got jobs, right? We work full time, we get up, we have a hard day of work, we get home, and it's like you clock in for your second shift, right? You clock
Exactly.
in, you start your new job of whatever you need to do for the day, which sometimes your coworker, I'm referring to the child, is not in a good mood that day. And that drastically alters how your night is going to go. So sometimes, you know what? You have a hard day at work, you're tired, and you get home and you have a kid who is just rough, right? He just doesn't want to follow direction, doesn't want to eat, doesn't want to take a bath, has temper tantrums, all that stuff makes it so much harder. And those moments are always going to be hard. But I think even when they're rough moments, being engaged is really important. And I think that they are way more observant than we give them credit for. And granted, right, this is like a science experiment. Like we're not going to find out for 18 years whether or not we did a good job. But you try, right? You try and you show up. And I think, again, trying to take advantage of the little wins of the day are so important. And for me, like a big little win for the day is, we get home, we do dinner time, and it's such a dumb, simple thing. But my kid, before we get him in the tub, we'll like strip him down except for his diaper, and I will tickle him, right? So I'll like blow raspberries on the stomach, and he just gets like the biggest laugh, and he's got this like big cheesy like teeth smile.
Oh God, I love that.
And it's awesome, right? It's such a, like, he could be having such a bad moment and he could be freaking out and crying, and I'll blow raspberries on his stomach, and then all of a sudden he like gets a good laugh. And those are those moments where like it kind of helps you even out too.
It's so nice that you have those moments where you can just take them out of their I'm such in a bad mood or whatever, and you make them and just have that feeling of, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm here with daddy. I'm here with mommy.
Yep.
I'm just happy. They're here with me. Everything is fine. And you just make them laugh and make them feel silly. And sometimes that's tough. Like you said, when you're at work all day and you have to come home, or if you have them by yourself all day, it's hard to be engaged with them when you're just exhausted. Or you have other things to do, like I got to put the dishes away. Like I know you want to play blocks, and I would love to play blocks, but I have to put the laundry away. Like you get so caught up in the things that you have to do that you kind of take away from them all of the times that they want to spend with you away from them. And that's not fair to them, but it's also not fair to you, because you have to do these things and you want to do these other things and play with the child. Where's the medium? Like, I've only found that the best thing to do is to have them do it with you. Is like, okay, so I have to put the laundry away. Okay, Allie, I need you to get all the socks from this gigantic mountain of clothes. I want you to go and find all the socks and put them in this one pile as I'm folding the shirts or pants or whatever. Have her help you, and that way you guys get your time together as the other one is crying in the other room. Sorry, Andrew, I can only do it with one kid at a time. But no, like you have that bonding time while you're also taking care of things that you have to do. And they're not playing in their kitchen or playing blocks or whatever, but you still get to find that happy medium of playing together and getting stuff done.
Totally. And I think part of it too is, children are children. Like there are moments where sometimes that my kid's being a little brat and I'm annoyed because he's being a brat. And you can't hold a grudge on a child who doesn't understand 10 seconds from the next, and I think and they don't know any better either, so I think those are those moments where I'll get frustrated sometimes, where like if I'm trying to feed him and he's just having a meltdown, and I'm like, I know he likes this, I know he needs to eat, we have to do this. And there are moments where sometimes I have to say to myself, like, he's a baby, he's just doing what a baby does because he's a baby,
just doesn't know.
Yeah. And Shannon will say that too, because Shannon can see it. I'm very expressive in my face, so she can tell when I'm annoyed, which, I've got this, like, I'll just look like immediate poker face, and then she's like, he's a baby. I'm like, I know. And I think sometimes there are those moments that are frustrating, but ultimately being there is what really counts. And this to me is still the best story personally for where being there really counts is, when Shannon was pregnant, I can't remember where we saw it or heard it, but they were saying, like play music to the belly, right? It helps get them acclimated to the environment, to stuff. So, and me, of course, I'm like, I'm not going to play like Mozart to the baby because
Yeah,
I'm
no,
me.
that's not us.
Yeah. So Shannon made me turn off like Between the Buried and Me. She's like, no death metal to the baby. But I play like some of my favorite bands. And there's one song in particular that I always like because I like the message behind it. And it's a song by a band called Into It Over It. And it's called Raw Bar OBX, which is supposed to be Outer Banks, North Carolina, 2002. And it's a cover of another band. But the song basically says in the lyrics, hey, I've got bigger fish to fry. They're swordfish size. They swim in small circles. They're asking for a break. Hey, I got bigger fish to fry. And I like that line, right? I like that line sometimes of like putting your problems in perspective of like, sometimes you got bigger fish to fry, right? So I just love this song. It's a really nice acoustic song.
I love that.
So I play it for Shannon's belly all the time. And to this day, if my kid is having a meltdown, if I play that song, he will literally stop. He will stop in his tracks and he will look for the music every single time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's a great moment, and I mean, even like when he would freak out, like this became like the soundtrack of putting him to sleep, right? Because, babies, if you don't know, if you're a new dad, babies don't produce melatonin, I think, until like month 4, 5, or 6, somewhere in that ballpark. So they literally can't get themselves to sleep. So when they say like rock the baby to sleep, it's because they literally don't know how to put themselves to sleep. Their body doesn't produce for lack of a better word, the chemicals to do that.
Right.
So you're rocking them to sleep. And I would play this soundtrack and I would sing these songs and I would just sing it over and over and over again. And that to this day at 19 months old, if that song comes on, he peers to the radio. Like he knows the songs I played to him in utero. And to me, it's the most awesome, amazing thing. And that to me honestly helped a lot with the doubt piece, right? Because you're like, oh my God, am I even making an impact as a dad, right? Everybody's always like, well, babies only see 12 inches out, so they know mom. Mom is who they know and recognize, and that's what they're comfortable with. Well, like, the baby may love mom, but sure as shit, when I get Into It Over It playing and I'm rocking him, that baby knows who I am because he's looking at me and he gets it. Like that's became our song, right? So every single time my baby's got a freak out moment, I play that song. Sure enough, every time he stops, he gets it. It just that to me was such like an aha moment of like, all I did was play songs to my wife's belly. Like when my son was born, I spent time with him and I held him and I rocked him and I played that song. But you know what? I'm hoping one day when my kid goes off to college and he's got a bad day and he's homesick, he'll play that damn song, and that's what he'll think of. Those are those moments of like, it's like a piggy bank, right? You're putting change in the piggy bank every single day. Every day you show up, you're putting change in the piggy bank. The piggy bank is your children's memories. It's those pieces. It's the impact you're making, right? So it's there. You're putting it into the bank. So it's preserved somewhere. I think it's huge. And just being there makes such a big impact. Changing diapers, man, rocking to sleep, playing peekaboo. It's such a dumb thing. It's such like a simple thing that as an adult, I think like it seems mundane sometimes, but I'm like, man, I'm playing peekaboo with him and he has a blast. Like he's just so excited to just be there. Like, I think those are those moments of just showing up every day and trying makes such a difference. Like, I love that feeling when my kid comes home from daycare. If Shannon picks him up, she'll walk in the front door and he looks over and he sees me and he's got just his like big, half tooth smile and he's all excited. Like it's the best feeling of the day. And it shows you that like with all the work that you're putting in every day, every bit of change you're putting in that piggy bank for your kid, that metaphorical piggy bank of the memory is the effort. It pays off in those moments, I think, right? So it's showing that it's making an impact. So no matter what you do as a dad, there's going to be fear, there's going to be uncertainty, there's going to be doubt. Just know that every day showing up, trying, taking care of your family, and just trying is what really is making that difference every day. Dads, it's going to be scary. You're not going to be sure if you're doing a good job. And you are going to be very doubtful of your abilities. But you know what? You got it.
That's okay. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to be afraid of what's coming. That's
Yep.
okay. But the most important thing is that you do put the time in, that you do try, and
So
that everything that you do is for Andre,
it's for the kids, man. Do it for the
always,
kids.
always for your kids. If you live your life as a parent knowing that everything is for your kids, you will be fine.
The most comforting feeling I have to say as an adult is being an adult and realizing that I have no idea what I'm doing is very relieving, knowing that as a person who's made it to adulthood, my parents didn't know what the hell they were doing either.
Honestly, dude, I don't think any parent knows what they're doing ever.
No clue. But having a good support system of friends, having people like you, Freddie, honestly was very, very comforting to me, because I think those ones where even if you didn't have the answer and then go, oh man, I'm really freaked out about this, you'd go, hey, look, man, it's okay. It's okay to not know the answer. And for somebody like me, it's a very stressful thing because, again, not having direction at all, or even just knowing where to, for lack of a better word, like knowing where to row, is really stressful. But having a good support system, if you've got it, is extremely helpful. And if you don't have it, know, if you're listening, that being scared is okay and that it's going to be all right, because you're going to figure it out. Because you know what? Kids are really resilient, and they're quite bouncy. I haven't, full disclosure, I haven't actually dropped my kid.
I have.
There's a guy I worked with who's 7 children, varying in age from like 13 to I would guess now 18 months.
Good heavens.
I know. They're Catholic. They don't believe in
No, yeah,
condoms.
got it. Say no more. You said Catholic.
Yeah.
That's fine. Got it.
But he wants, I was very, again, along with the dad realm, right? I was doing like crowdsourcing at this point. I'm like, oh God, am I going to screw this up? And he looked at me, he's like, listen, man, don't worry about it. Kids are surprisingly resilient. And I said, well, what if I drop them? And he goes, I've dropped my kids. And I said, oh my God, really? And he goes, yeah. The only real problem is if you can tell which kid I dropped. He's which is terrible.
Oh,
but he made
God.
a really good point. But it's a good point. You know what I mean? Like, if nobody can tell which one of the kids was the one that was dropped, then like it's probably fine. They're very resilient. Like Shannon showed me this bath video of a kid, and it was like, literally, it's like this baby in Africa, and this lady is washing this baby on her lap. And I can only describe that she is flipping this baby around like a rag doll. She's like washing the back, and then she like flips him over the belly and is washing. It's like the most, to me, I'm like, this is aggressive. This is the way my dog chews up a rope toy.
Yeah.
This is the way this lady's bathing a baby. And that baby was like totally fine when she was done. And I'm watching in like pure terror. My wife's like, oh my God, can you believe this? And I'm like, and you know what? I'm like, and that's probably how they do it culturally. And it's totally fine. And that baby's okay, because babies are extremely resilient. They have very simple needs. They need to be fed, they need sleep, and they need to be held. Literally, like, one of their needs is they need to be held. They need coddling and like human affection. That's part of just being a baby. Like, that's it. You meet their needs, and your focus as a dad is making sure that mom's okay so she can help take care of that stuff too. Like, that's pretty much your function. And just show up, try. That's it.
I think that like initially what we were talking about was the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's always going to be uncertainty. There's always going to be doubt, and there's always going to be fear. But at least one of those things that you can kind of curb a little bit is fear. Just know that it's okay to be afraid. You don't know what's coming next. You don't know what's going to happen, but you learn. And so long as you apply that new knowledge to taking care of your child, you'll be okay. You've got to learn as they grow and grow as they learn, apparently. So
yeah, I mean, even what you'll go through many bouts in your life in which you have more fear about your kid. Even with being a dad, going through the motions, already doing all the things you need to do, providing, there's still going to be fear moments. I mean, my wife had to go back to work, and the daycare was closed for a week. So I took a week off to watch my son. And I remember texting Freddie at the start of that week, and I said, I'm watching my kid alone for a week, and I am terrified. And Freddie's like, you watch him every day. And I'm like, no, but it's different. I'm doing this alone. And he's like, well, have you never been left alone with your baby? I'm like, no, I have, but it's just different. And Freddie's like, well, you've done this. So like, don't worry so much. I went in on Monday, like in terror mode. I was like full on, like ready for war. I was just so freaked out about doing this. And then by Wednesday, it was like, him and I were playing outside. He's like at a water table. We're listening to Nirvana, and I'm like just chilling in the back patio. I was like, this shit is breezy. I'm having a good old time. And then Thursday, he had a meltdown about something. He didn't want a nap or whatever. And Thursday was a rough day. And you know what? But if you compared my mindset and the confidence in my ability on Monday compared to Thursday on how to deal with it was totally different. Because I went in, I was scared on Monday. I knew I had that fear. By Thursday, I felt way more comfortable in what I was doing, and I was way more confident that I was capable of doing this and like keeping this kid alive. Again, you just learn. You literally learn by doing and being, and like you'll realize like again they're really resilient. Yeah, you know what? Well, I was watching him. He ate crap a bunch of times, not literal crap. He tripped and fell, and he got scuffed up, and he cried and he got up and he was fine. And he had meltdowns. He had days he didn't want to nap or didn't want to eat. And they do that. And you know what?
It's okay.
It's been 6 months. He's still kicking okay, So you figure it out. You end up okay.
All right. Enough with the heavy stuff. Let's move on to the little bit of a lighter side to it. Andre, what would you like to talk about when it comes to what you're doing when you are not being a parent? Something that you do not being a dad.
So I want to talk about decompression.
Okay.
And I think you touched on the subject already, that just because you're a parent does not mean that you are not you. Right. And I think you mentioned that earlier on, right? You have a sense of self, right? You're molding your child in a certain way. And part of that is going to be tied to how you are as a person, right? So, I mean, it's like you're not a machine. So you have your sense of personality, your sense of self. And I think it's really important to keep that, right? Finding those things that you still enjoy and that can help you maintain that sense of self and help relieve some stress, right? So
sure.
It will also keep you probably from yelling at your kid so frequently.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So taking some of those moments to take care of yourself is really important. And, I go through this battle at home because my wife's not very good at that. And I have to encourage her sometimes, right? It's go get your nails done, do whatever, right? Don't feel guilty about you wanting to be you, because it's important. You having a sense of self is going to allow you to better take care of your kid. And it's really cliche, but I remember there was a lady I worked with who once said this, and it was a good analogy that said, there's a reason why when they talk about a plane crash, sorry to use this as an example, but when you talk about a plane crash, what they always recommend is when your masks drop, that you put your mask on first before you take care of the others around you. And the idea is that if you don't take care of yourself, it's going to be much harder for you to help take care of others. So, and I like that analogy, right? It's really important.
That makes sense.
It's a bit morbid, but the concept there is what's important. Yeah. So I think, right, taking care of yourself allows you to be there and more present for your family. I think because I think there's a piece where as humans we're innately selfish in some form or fashion, right? And you never want to have a grudge towards your family. You never want to have that grudge where like you feel like you've lost something. Well, and like being a parent is some sacrifice. So I don't want to gloss over that, but I think it's really important to note that you can still have a sense of self and be the person that you want to be. And part of that is taking care of yourself. So for me personally, there are two things that I focus on that really help me continue to be me. Those selfish moments I take for myself. One is strength training. So if those of you who do not know me or can't see me on camera, I am not what one would call the pinnacle of fitness, but I'm also not like Jabba the Hutt. So I'm a happy middle ground somewhere between Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt from a build perspective. For me, it's strength training is really important, and it's something that my brother had introduced me to that I got into very late in life. My brother's been doing this for years. And for me, it kind of all started with, originally it started with like, well, I want to lose a couple pounds, and then I lost some weight, and I said, oh, okay, well now I've lost a couple pounds, and paper clips feel heavy, so something's not right here. I have to probably hit the gym and actually try and put on some muscle. And I talked to my brother about this, and my brother said, well, what do you want this for? And I said, well, I think I want to be strong enough that I feel good, as odd as that may sound. Like I feel like there's no worse feeling than like opening a pickle jar and being defeated by a pickle jar and having to break the knife out and like tap the side, So just being able to be more functional in life, right? My brother said, well, you should just strength train a little bit, build some muscle, just build your general strength. And for me, I started, it was really clunky and it felt super unnatural. And me, I'm not like an athletic person by any means. I played baseball as a kid, and pretty much my baseball coach told my parents, like, maybe you should buy him a piano. Like, does he sing? Because that's maybe might be a better path for him. I'm not athletically inclined by any means. But as I started to progress with strength training, what it taught me was a few things. One being discipline, right? It's something that takes a lot of commitment to do. It takes time. It's something you have to really want. And albeit it, when I started, didn't take a lot of time because I wasn't lifting very heavy weight, but you have to dedicate 45 minutes of your day, call it, right? So this is just something that I was very focused on, like, okay, I'm going to commit this to myself. And as I was going through this process, even though it was slow process, I learned my own capabilities. That's, I think, what I get the most out of strength training, is that even though I'm not, let's say, physically where I want to be, or I'm not as strong as I want to be, and for me, it's a goal to keep going, what I think is it shows me that I'm way more capable than I give myself credit for. And I think where I equate that to like my regular day life is, there's a day where it's not a lot of weight, but I have 275 pounds on my back and I squat it, right? I can do squats at 300 pounds. So me being able to get a toddler to eat broccoli should be easy because I've done something that's heavier and harder today. I can't even tell you how many days that I would have. I know I have a hard day coming up at the office, and I think, you know what? I'm going to lift some heavy shit. And it's all relative. It's really not that heavy, but it's heavy for me. And I think for me, a lot of times it helps my mental state of knowing, like, I'm starting my day with something really fucking hard for me. And I am proving to myself how ridiculously capable I am to handle something like that. That going in and having a hard conversation at work, or getting my toddler to take a nap or take his medicine, is not nearly as hard as whatever I've already done for the day, right? So I think it's a big piece. Also, it helps tire you a bit, but in a good way, right? Because I'm somebody where if I work in a cube farm more or less, and when you're in that environment, you don't move around much. It's not good for the body. Like, we're not designed to just sit in a cube all day. So doing something, being active, is really helpful. And I think for me, it helps tire my mind a little bit. And it definitely, there's some days, especially heavy, what I would consider my heavy days. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes I feel beat up, but I can tell you, I sleep like a baby on those nights. Granted, I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight because I'm pretty drunk, but I'm a few scotches deep. But I also worked out today, so I'm probably going to sleep pretty good. And that has helped me a lot because I found that, man, you know what? I work out hard, and by the end of the day, I sleep a lot better. And then the next day, I feel a lot better. And feeling better when I get up really helps me focus on everything. Like, I feel like it helps me be a better dad. It helps me focus on my job. It helps me on all those things I know I need to tackle. And there are days where, like, my kid kind of pisses me off. Like, I hate to say that, but that's the reality of what it is as a parent. Like, there are days where, like, stuff's just hard. Like, work sometimes sucks, and sometimes, like, you won't always agree with your spouse. Like, things are sometimes hard. That's just how life is. I mean, you deal with hard things in life. That's just the nature of being alive. And you know what? I can't punch my boss. Well, it probably could, but it'd be a bad move, right? You can't punch your baby. Again, also probably physically could, but terrible move.
Please don't punch your babies.
Yeah,
by the way.
Don't punch any babies. But you know what you can do? You can go into the gym. You can go, for me, I've got a home gym. I go in my garage. I put a barbell on my back. You know what? I do the workout, and it helps. It helps a lot. It helps, I think, just you can focus on something that's hard and frustrating, and you can put your energy towards something that's beneficial for you. You take something maybe a negative and put it into a positive. I can't even tell you how many days where I'd have like a pissed off moment for my boss, and I'm like, it's like you want to save it like a squirrel. Like you want to like salvage that moment, because I'm like, I'm going to walk into the gym at 5 and I'm going to sound like a murderer, like just grunting like an idiot, but I'm going to get that aggression out, and that's going to be my fuel. And I think those are those moments that help you get through life, is just like finding those things that, that you can focus your energy on in a positive way. And plus, like, my legs look really good in shorts now.
And I love that. Like what I imagined is the second part of the show is where we talk about things that we like to do when we're not being parents. But I absolutely love the fact that you're taking something that you're doing when you're not being a parent to still better you as a parent. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really do love that. And the lifting aspect is so good for your, number one, your health and your strength training. But I mean, we've all been there when your spouse is just getting on your nerves, or maybe they're not even doing anything bad, but you're having a bad day and they're
Yep.
just saying the wrong things, and you got to get the aggression out. I've been there before, where I'm in the gym and I'm just lifting way heavier than I should because it makes me feel better, and it's not hurting anybody. I'm not taking it out on my kids. I'm not taking it out on my wife, but I'm still getting that aggression, that anger out in a positive way, where I'm doing
Yep.
it all to better myself. And I love that. I think that's fantastic. I admittedly have gotten away from the gym in the last couple of weeks because it's a little harder with 2 kids, but God, every morning when I wake up for work, I'm like, I should have gotten up earlier to go to the gym. And it's not like I'm hitting my wife or anything, but I'm like, sometimes I
No, but it's helpful. It really is.
it
I
really
think it's
is.
helpful for your mental, for your mental being. Some days I feel like the days that I would skip, or if I would have constant skips at the gym, you just feel out of routine, right? Something feels broken from your routine. And I think sometimes that being able to focus your mind on something, just the same way that your body produces endorphins from anything else, like your body produces endorphins from you going to the gym. You know what I mean? Like you're literally producing, I don't know the correct term is, it's basically like the happy chemicals in your brain, your
No,
release
yeah,
when
no,
you
you're right.
exercise.
Endorphins.
Is endorphins?
No, it's heroin.
That's the other one. Don't do that. That will probably make
Please
you
don't
a
do
very
heroin.
bad
Dads on the
parent.
Rocks does not promote doing heroin.
We do not condone heroin here. But I'll go in the gym, just like you said. I'll have like, I'll know it's a heavy set coming up. I'll play in the song right. I'll put a bar on my back and I'll play Alexis on Fire and just time it right for the spot where the guy goes, "Wah!" And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this set. And and it's fucking hard, and sometimes it's painful, not in a physical painful way, just it's physically hard, right? It's physically hard, it's mentally hard. Sometimes it's getting through the mental roadblocks of what you're doing. You want to talk about FUD? There are moments too where I'm like, I'm not going to be able to lift this, or like, I'm not going to be able to stand back up from this. Like, those are those moments too. But you know what? You do something hard, you're bettering yourself. And this is how I look at it, in the same aspect, like you said, of, or the same aspect I mentioned of like putting change in the piggy bank. It's the same way, right? It's for me, it's like it's punching a clock some days. And some days I may only get half my workout in. But you know what I think about in the long term? I think, man, you know what? Me being able to have a heavy squat may mean that one day I might be able to spend more time running around with my kids because I'm in better shape. Like I want to be able to pick my kid up on my shoulders and run around with him and not be out of breath, which thankfully right now I don't have that instance. But you know what? He's going to be heavier. And
Yeah, they're gonna get heavier.
yeah, he's going to weigh more than a barbell one day. And when that day happens, I want to make sure I can do it. And what I don't want, and I think what I've watched indirectly a little bit is like, I've seen a little bit of like the entropy of being an adult, right? It just happens. You get old and you get weaker, and this helps stop it. It helps slow it down. You know what I mean? And I'd like to be able to take this throughout my life. And I think it's a good lesson one day that I'll be able to teach my son too, is that, when he's 3 or 4, he's probably going to see me work out in the gym, in the garage a few times. Right. And he's probably going to want to know what I'm doing. And I'm going to explain to him like, well, daddy's trying to make sure that he's strong, because having a strong body will help you have a strong mind, and it will help you be more capable of things. There's I hate this quote because it's stupid, but I think it's also somehow a great quote at the same time. There's a guy named Mark Ripito, who has a company called Starting Strength. If you want to get into training, by the way, and you don't train, I do recommend at least looking into the methods. I think he's a little bit, he is a very interesting person, but his methods and his concept is very good. But he has a quote that says, "Stronger people are harder to kill and generally more useful." And it's also like, it's kind of stupid because I think no matter what, if somebody shoots you, like, it's probably not a good sign for you. But the concept of like what he's saying with it is like, you know what, you having physical strength in your life will provide more benefits than not. Like, I don't think there's gonna be a point that I look back in my life and I'm gonna go, oh man, me being stronger was really not beneficial to me. Like, no, it is. Even if it's bringing in water bottles from Sam's Club into my garage, like, being able to take 2 at a time is helpful for me. So doing that it's a good thing, right? And I think being able to teach and show your kid like taking care of yourself and being able to physically show them that is really important. And this is a good way to do that. Like, hey, this is a self-care thing and it's teaching you to be better as a person and deal with really hard stuff, No,
I like that. And then nobody has ever said, man, I wish I didn't work out today. Like, that's nobody has ever said that. Like, okay, you're sore. Don't, like, okay, suck it up. Tomorrow you're not going to be as sore. It's no big deal. It's bettering yourself. And you can teach your child what it means to take care of your own mind and body at the same time. It's
a life lesson, man.
It's a life lesson. It's worth it to teach them that it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to take care of your body. And if you can do both at the same time, then good.
So in addition to lifting, a big thing that I do for free time for myself is I like to cook. And what works out great about cooking is, for one, I'm helping provide to the family. It's something I enjoyed a lot before I had kids. And, it's something that I can kind of mentally do on cruise control. Like, I'll throw a podcast on, or I'll throw on some music. I cut some onions. I try to avoid my fingers. And I can, and right, it's something that it reminds me of me before I had kids. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I love who I am now that I have kids, but I also know that, this is something that I enjoyed before having a child. And I like being able to just, again, kind of put my brain on cruise control. I can kind of be a little creative too. It's cooking's a little bit like jazz, right? You throw in a little bit of salt, you can kind of be a little liberal with the seasonings, right? It doesn't have to have a rhyme or reason. You just kind of go for it, right? Mm-hmm. So that has been great for me. Granted, now it's a little bit more like, chopped, even though I try not to let it be that way, because sometimes I do have a time frame. But for the most part, my wife and I have a pretty good understanding, and she'll watch her son for a good bit, and I'll try and prep for the week and things like that. But that has been a great decompression thing for me. Again, I'll pop in headphones, put on a podcast I want to listen to. Actually, I think last time I cooked last week, I listened to your podcast.
Oh, nice.
I put that in. Yeah. I started prepping my vegetables and I was like, okay, here's my list of what I want to catch up on this week. So again, it's a great thing for me. It lets me catch up on adult stuff that's not just Peppa Pig and Bubble Guppies.
Yeah. Two main things that from what you just said. Number one, as Lucas, and for our listeners, if you have small kids, once they get a little bit older, they're going to want to help and they're going to want to do things as you're cooking. So you need to, number one, obviously make sure that their fingers are away from the cutting board. And number two, do things.
Very solid advice.
I mean, okay, don't put your fingers where the big knife is. Okay, easy peasy. Yeah. So allow them to help. Okay, maybe not cutting the onions or putting the onions where they can put their hands in their face, but something towards throwing something in the garbage can or what have you. Let them do something to help because they feel a sense of pride that they helped with dinner. And I can't stress it enough where it makes you feel better that you're not only spending time with them, but they are also getting a sense of pride in that. So do something to where they can actually help with dinner. Let them do something safe where they can feel that their input is validated. So let him help you cook, and who knows, that'll maybe make them into a chef one day. Maybe not, but at least they can have an appreciation for the fact that you let them cook.
Let them peel the garlic. I say this for a few reasons. One, because peeling garlic is the crappiest job in a kitchen, hands down. Two, they don't know it's the crappiest job in a kitchen. They'll just be excited that they're helping you. And three, peeling garlic really, really sucks. This goes back to point one. It's terrible. But right, they're contributing. You're talking about it's a something that can be done that involves no tools. They don't have to cut themselves doing it. All they have to do is just kind of like peel away. So I think that would be a really helpful thing. You could probably have them peel carrots too, depending on the capacity. Maybe just don't give them any tools. But there's some stuff that you could have them do. I totally agree. And for me, I think, right, we're in a brave new world. I don't want to say the roles are reversed. The roles have changed, right? This isn't 1950 where just the mom cooks, right? Dads cook. I mean, it's a thing, right? I mean, my wife and I take turns cooking. For the most part, I generally take the lead on cooking. My wife does a much better job at cleaning than I do, but that's something where we try and share the roles and responsibilities. But you know what? I think that, just like Freddie said, getting your kid involved and having them understand and appreciate that they're helping, or that there's like effort that goes into this, or even like, we're going through the phase where every single time my kid does something, we're making it like the biggest deal on the planet because it's teaching them to encourage them to do positive things. Right. So, my kid puts a toy back in the toy box and I'm like, yeah, good job, buddy.
You
make such a huge deal. Exactly. You clap and he claps and he's excited. Like, imagine the sense of pride that they're going to feel. And even when they're a little bit older, right, be excited for that moment that in kindergarten, it's like, what do you like to do in your free time? I like to cook with my daddy. Like that. Those are those moments that I'm looking forward to that are huge. Mm-hmm. And again, it's something that I enjoy. Like if my kid ends up being a chef one day and it started because I let him peel garlic, like that's a pretty awesome thing. It's you're making that impact and you can still have a sense of you and be impactful and bring positive change and influence to your kids' lives. It's an incredible thing.
So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Dads on the Rocks podcast. Thank you so much for Andre being my guest on the July edition of the Dads on the Rocks podcast. In the future, Andre, I may trouble you to be on a show again because I absolutely loved talking to you. And I know we've talked off air about Boy Meets World. And I think I kind of want to do a Dad's Day Off episode on that if you'd be interested.
Oh, dude, I love it. I'm so
excited. I really, really want to do that. But first, I'd like to have you tell everybody about the podcast that you host, which is the Yoma's Cooking Cast. So please let everybody know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned to everybody really that, I enjoy cooking. It's something that I enjoy in my free time. And what I learned over the years of cooking is like, I'm not a great cook, but I enjoy it, right? And I enjoy eating. And I think that there's some technical knowledge that goes into cooking things and improving your home cooking game, as I would put it. So I teamed up with a good friend of mine who's a chef, and we kind of go through those home cooking strategies that improve your cooking game at home. And it really is kind of like ask a chef, right? So it gives me an opportunity to ask him all the dumb questions that I wouldn't want to ask a normal chef, but somebody who is a little bit more accepting and understanding and can let me ask extremely stupid questions. So we've got a fun little podcast. It's very insightful, mainly because Yoma is a really great cook. But if you want to check us out, we are Yoma's Cooking Cast. We're on pretty much wherever podcasts are available.
So as I like to do with every Dads on the Rocks podcast, Andre, do you have any last words for our listeners today?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. I've really had an awesome time. I'm a little drunk, but more importantly, I've had a great time just even talking to you. And I hope that we help improve dads' lives. I hope we just improve families in general and help people. I think it's an awesome thing what you're doing. And when you told me about the idea of the podcast, I was super stoked because I know everybody always says like, you don't understand until you have a kid. And my concept, like my mindset of that was like, all right, whatever. And you know what? They sure as shit were absolutely right. Because having a kid is awesome. And I think having a community of other dads and having conversations and things will help grow and help us become better dads. So thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for listening to us. And I'm also really excited to talk about Boy Meets World soon. And I'll have to do a rewatch. I basically lived my entire life as Corey, more or less, like just as this awkward dude. I mean, I married my weird Topanga, and as my final word, they want you to take the roles.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Daddy.
Good night, baby.